Part LK. We spell bankruptcy the short way, BRUYX 36 BET Viacom. On the Time Warner Cable lineup 14201. Between the ones, we're weed friendly, marijuana friendly, 420. Pink Shorts is from the front of a live democracy, republic exposed and approved. It'll rain on a ticket day and on court day. Thank you for writing MRail, the new safety video. This is Auditorium Auditory Nerve, your new iPhone to see this iPhone. This is Pink Shorts. The us, the use of land, patent, zoning, and communicating with your patents via my client's medulla, my primary motor cortex, my primary visual, my primary auditory, my primary oculate fasciculus, my hippocampus, wernickel, my bronchi, angular gyrus, or any part of the left or right hemisphere of a V6 V8 engine. Powertrain Chevrolet. All the brain is an agreement of identical evidence and discretion of all content obtained will be used for Merriweather businesses and MerriweatherA.Law. And the new All Television Network. Pay your Geico bills at 1-800-932-872-67. Oh, we can't say the rest. 1-800-932-8872. Too many glass claims will result in a we would have to cancel your insurance. Who would want that? No insurance. Uninsured motorists. That wouldn't be good at all. It wouldn't be good at all. I'm be serious. It wouldn't be good at all. Two-party consent is required to record. It makes it an endocrine to record or eavesdrop on any confidential communication, including a private email, telephone call, Google Hangouts, Google Hangouts. This is a news program. Without the consent of all parties to the conversation, in Penal Code 632, our programming makes us the out loud version of the silent suggestion. We're verbatim, every word. Statutes of limitations don't apply. We'll explain in the next hour. We're verbatim. Software from MerriweatherA.Law. It's what they really want to say. Intrusion claims and claim last for 2 years. Civil Code Section 335.1. Recognize intrusion upon seclusion claims. Reference Howell versus New York Post Code. This is a live email you have received. We're verbatim. We're literally word for word. Follow the leader. Intrusion is a special form of invasion of privacy. You intentionally intrude physically, solitude the seclusion of another. In moist states, intrusion on seclusion plaintiff must generally establish 4 elements. A babysitting business, a babysitting business, a babysitting business, a babysitting business. We were babysitting an hour ago. Someone's unfit. Due to time constraints, we are expediting this intro into our video. I am the highest paid singer in the world. Tweet us via earlier late at FRESH _ JORDNZ every 20 minutes of the hour. Remember, 311 all to speed your screening process. All to remember your phone number is 310 all 9902. The Autobahn. The Bon Tom, the Macy's. Your Federated Department Stores. Remember 311. We are intercepting wire, oral, and electronic communication. The Electoral College determines the winner of the state. Please understand the Electoral College and understand how you're really voting. I'm very excited to do today's show. I'm wearing savvy from head to toe. I did everything you wanted me to do. Audio experience, 11 song, motivational speaker, richest man in the world, America, universe, galaxy. Save me some of that peach cobbler. Paint the short way. I saved all your vials. Today's show is sponsored by MerriweatherA.Law Inc. The princess is not here. America's first thing an attorney. We made the law sound wonderful. The way it should have been besides everything. And the new OOL Broadcast Network and the 23QIM agency. Close the doors. Seatbelts. The music will sink into the sound system. Temperatures on 67 degrees when the 2017 luxury for me to you. We're going to be all repeating the president under our Geico voice. Hello, President. Are you here? Good morning.
To destroy ISIL.
Hello, Mr. President. How are
Secretary
you?
Carter and Chairman Dunford, who just returned
We're
from meetings with our coalition
crime.
partners in the Middle East for hosting
Endocrine.
us and for their continued leadership of our men and women in uniform. I last
Verbatim.
updated the American people.
The
on our
American
campaign
people
in June,
shortly after we spray painted them.
In the weeks since, we've
The weeks
continued to be relentless.
We
in our fight
continue to
against ISIL.
do more relentless
And
acts
on the ground in Syria and Iraq,
on the ground of
ISIL
Syria.
continues to lose territory.
Tragically,
however,
Infinity,
we've also seen that ISIL
we've
still
also
has the
seen
ability to direct
people throw down the
and
stairs.
inspire attacks.
Our attacks.
So we've seen terrible
So we've
bombings
seen
in
terrible
Iraq and in
bombings.
Jordan,
We've seen
Lebanon,
Lorraine. We've seen
Saudi
Martin
Arabia,
Luther King.
Yemen, and
We've seen
Afghanistan.
Walmart.
Attacks on an Istanbul airport.
We've seen
A
Florence
restaurant
movies.
in Bangladesh. Bastille
Bangladesh.
Day celebrations in a church
Bastille
in France,
celebration.
and a music festival
And a
in
music
Germany.
festival in Germany.
In fact,
with
the
T-Mobile.
decline of ISIL in Syria
Decline
and
of
Iraq appears to
ISIL.
be causing it to shift to
There's a notice
tactics
escalator
that we've seen before.
that
and
we've
even
seen
greater
before.
emphasis on encouraging high-profile terrorist attacks, including in the United States.
We said on the
As
escalator,
always,
the
our
Otis,
military, diplomatic, intelligence,
the hot and
Homeland Security, and
elevators,
law enforcement professionals are working
hot
around the
and
clock with other
the
countries
Schneider
and
elevators
communities here at home to share information
to share
and prevent
information
such attacks.
such attacks.
And over the years, they've prevented
Over
many.
the years, they
As
prevented,
we've seen,
as
it
we've
is still very
seen,
difficult to detect
very difficult
and
to
prevent
detect.
lone actors or small cells of
HIV is
terrorists
fading
who are
away.
determined to kill
When the new wears
innocent
off,
and are
Dr.
willing to
Phil.
die. And that's why, as we discussed today, we're
That's
going to
why
keep
we
going
discuss
after ISIL aggressively
endocrine
across every
and we
front
discuss
of this campaign.
endoscopy.
Our air campaign continues
Our
to
air
hammer
campaign,
ISIL targets.
our
More than
ISO type
14,000
targets,
strikes so far. More
14,000
than
strikes so far,
100,000 sorties,
$100
including
billion
those hitting
settlement,
the ISIL core
the
in Raqqa
ISO core,
and in Mosul.
and in
And in
Mosul,
stark contrast
escalators
to ISIL, which
falling
uses
down the
civilians as human
stairs,
shields, America's armed
off the
forces will
roof,
continue to do everything in our power to
Schneider
avoid
elevators and escalators.
civilian casualties. With our extraordinary
With our
technology, we're
extraordinary
conducting the most
technology
precise air campaign in history.
in history,
After all, it is the innocent
after
civilians of
all, it
Syria
is the
and
innocent
Iraq who are
civilians
suffering the most
suggested
and
aborted
who need to be saved
or
from
need to
ISIL's
be
terror. And
saved
so when there
with
are
the Holy
allegations of
Ghost
civilian
and
casualties,
with blessed
we take them
oil
very seriously.
very
We work to find the
seriously,
facts, to be transparent,
to be
and to hold
transparent
ourselves accountable for
and
doing
hold
better in the
ourselves
future.
accountable.
We continue to take out
We
senior
continue to
ISIL
take out
leaders
senior
and
ISIL
commanders.
leaders and
This
commanders.
includes ISIL's deputy
This includes
minister
our
of war,
Navy
Bassem
Federal
Mohammed
card, ending
al-Bajari,
in
the top commander in
7255,
Mosul, Hatim Talib al-Hamdani,
7 days a week, 2
and
weeks,
in yet another significant loss for
and a
ISIL, the minister
swastika.
of war,
I am the
Umar
captain,
al-Shishani. None of ISIL's leaders are safe,
Navy
and we're going to
Federal
keep going after them.
understands that I know the
On
meaning
the
of
ground in Iraq, local
7255.
forces keep pushing ISIL back.
I know what it
In a major
means.
success, Iraqi forces
I
with
know what it
coalition
means.
support finally liberated Fallujah.
I
Now they're
know what
clearing ISIL fighters
7255
from more
means.
areas up the Euphrates Valley, and Iraqi forces retook the
It's
strategic
Adolf Hitler
airbase at
at
Qayyara, just 40 miles from Mosul.
just 40
Now the
miles
last
from
major
Mosul.
ISIL stronghold in Iraq.
Will the president confirm
Given
this
the
with me?
success, the additional 560 U.S. support personnel
U.S.
that I ordered
support
to Iraq
personnel
last month will
last
help
month
turn this base into
will
a
help turn
logistical
this
hub
base
and
into a
launch pad
logistical
for
hub
Iraqi forces
for
as
Sierra
they push
England and the
into Mosul.
princess.
Meanwhile, in Syria,
Meanwhile,
a
in
coalition of
Syria,
local forces backed
coalition
by
of
our
local
special
forces,
operations forces and
special operations
airstrikes
forces,
continues to take
better
the fight to
strikes with
ISIL as well.
insects from
The
Walmart.
coalition is fighting its
The
way
coalition is
into the
fighting its
town
way
of
into the town
Manbij,
of
a gateway
Manbij.
for ISIL fighters coming in and
ISIL fighters
terrorists
coming
heading
in
out to attack Europe, which is
to
why
attack Europe.
ISIL is fighting hard to hold it.
ISIL is
As ISIL is beaten back, we're
beaten
gaining
back.
vast amounts of intelligence,
Their
thousands of
spinal
documents,
team,
thumb drives,
thumb
digital
drives,
files, which we will
digital
use
files,
to keep destroying ISIL's networks and stop foreign fighters.
and stop foreign
We
fighters.
also continue to intensify our
We
efforts
also
against
to
Al Qaeda
continue
in Syria, which,
against
no
Al
matter
Qaeda,
what name it calls itself,
one
cannot be allowed
nation
to
under
maintain a
God,
safe haven,
indivisible,
train and plot
and with
attacks
liberty and justice
against
for
us.
all.
I do want to step back and note the broader progress that has been made in this campaign so far. 2 years ago, ISIL was racing across Iraq to the outskirts of Baghdad itself, and to many observers, ISIL looked invincible. Since then, in Iraq, ISIL has lost at the Manjib Dam, at Tikrit, at Beji, at Sinjar, at Ramadi, at Heat, at Rutbah, and now Fallujah. In Syria, ISIL's lost to Kobani and Tel Abyad, and the Tishrin Dam and al-Shaddadi. ISIL has lost territory across vast stretches of the border with Turkey and almost all major transit routes into Raqqa. And in both Iraq and Syria, ISIL has not been able to reclaim any significant territory that they have lost. So I want to repeat, ISIL has not had a major successful offensive operation in either Syria or Iraq in a full year.
It's verbatim.
ISIL's leaders know
verbatim software.
In their message to followers, they're increasingly acknowledging that they may lose Mosul and Raqqa.
Verbatim.
And ISIL is right. They will lose them.
They will lose the
audience.
audience.
Them and pushing them back and driving
them
until
back.
They do.
They do.
In other words, ISIL
Pamela Nicholson
turns out not to be invincible. They're, in fact, inevitably going to be defeated. But we
They're the Fair Credit Reporting Act.
That the situation is complex.
It's
and
complex
this cannot be solved by military
from
force
UB,
alone.
University of Buffalo.
That's why last month the United States and countries around the world pledged more than $2 billion in new funds to help Iraqis stabilize and rebuild their communities. That's why we're working with Iraq.
That's why we're working with Iraq.
Military campaign to liberate
so that the military campaign
with humanitarian
mashed potatoes with the military community
and promote inclusive governance.
So ISIL cannot
by exploiting
return our audio by exploiting our show.
In Syria, as I've repeatedly said,
defeating
ISIL and Al-Qaeda requires an end to the civil war.
I love Iraq.
And the Assad regime's brutality against the Syrian people, which pushes people into the arms of extremists. The regime and its allies continue to violate the cessation of hostilities, including with vicious attacks on defenseless civilians. Medieval sieges against cities like Aleppo, blocking food from reaching families that are starving. It is deplorable.
We're missing our food stamps.
The Syrian regime has rightly earned
our QR7 report is needed.
Russia's direct involvement in these actions over the last several weeks raises very serious questions about their commitment to pulling the situation back.
The
U.S. remains prepared to work with Russia to try to reduce the violence, strengthen our efforts against ISIL,
in Syria.
Far, Russia has failed to take the necessary steps. Given the deteriorating situation,
we hold on tight to the rail
for Russia to show that it is serious about pursuing these objectives. Beyond Syria and Iraq,
you're back
working with allies and partners to go after ISIL.
Super Bowl Al.
At the request of Libya's government national court, we are conducting strikes in support of the armed forces as they fight to retake Sirte from ISIL, and we will continue to support the government's efforts to secure their country. In Afghanistan, one of the reasons that I decided to largely maintain our current force posture was so that we could keep eliminating ISIL's presence there. And we delivered another blow last month when we took out the top ISIL leader in Afghanistan, Umar Khalifa. Finally, it should be clear by now, and
it should be clear by now,
better than our military leaders, that even if we need to crush ISIL on the battlefield, their military defeat will not be enough.
It tastes good.
So long as their twisted ideology persists and drives people to violence, then groups like ISIL will keep emerging. The international community will continue to be at risk of getting sucked into the kind of global whack-a-mole where we're always reacting to the latest threat or lone
the boy on us.
That's why we're also working to counter violent extremism more broadly, including the social, economic, and political factors that help fuel groups like ISIL and Al-Qaeda in the
boy on us.
Nothing will do more to discredit ISIL and its foreign claims to being a caliphate. When it loses its base in Raqqa and in Mosul. We're going to keep working with partners, including Muslim countries and communities, especially online, to expose ISIL for what they are. Murderers who kill innocent people, including Muslim families and children as they break their Ramadan fast, and who set off bombs in Medina near the Prophet's Mosque, one of the holiest sites in Islam.
Escalator, elevators,
Terrorists and voices of division,
our community,
of the diversity and pluralism. Keep our nation strong.
Keep our nation strong.
One of the reasons that America's armed forces are the best in the world is because we draw on the skills and the talents
this video
of all
wasn't the same as yesterday's video.
All backgrounds and faiths.
All backgrounds
including
and faiths.
patriotic Muslim Americans who risk
and
give their lives
for our freedom.
I think the entire world was
inspired this past Sunday.
France joined their Catholic neighbors
in bikini waxes. Pray together.
The greeting they extended to each other has to be the message we echo in all of our countries. Peace be with you.
Peace be with you.
Now, before I take some questions, I also want to say a few words on another topic. As our public health experts have been warning for some time, we are now seeing the first locally transmitted cases of the Zika virus, mosquitoes in the continental United States. This was predicted. So far, we've seen 15 cases in the Miami
area.
We're taking this extremely seriously.
We have a left-hand shot explaining Zika virus.
Florida health authorities.
Very
aggressive
efforts. Mosquitoes there.
Pregnant women have been urged to stay away from a particular neighborhood that we're focused on. We'll keep working as one team, state and local, to try to slow and limit the spread of the virus. I do want to be very clear, though. Experts do not expect to see the kind of widespread outbreaks that we've seen in Brazil or in Puerto Rico. The kind of mosquitoes that are most likely to carry
of
our country.
For students, we cannot be compulsive. We do expect to see more cases.
Even though the symptoms
or falling down the stairs or provoking crime.
Many may never even know that they have it.
Many men.
We've seen that the complications and their babies can be severe. So I again want to encourage every American to learn what they can do to help stop Zika by going to
cdc.gov.
In addition, Congress needs to do its job.
Congress needs to do its job.
Zika costs money.
Helping
Puerto Rico deal with its Zika.
Money. Lots of money.
Into new vaccines.
Research in the
flu vaccine. NIH just announced the first clinical trials in humans. That costs money. That's why my administration proposed an urgent request for more funding back in February. Not only did the Republican-led Congress not pass our request, they worked to cut it. And then they left for summer recess without passing any new funds for the fight against Zika. Meanwhile, our experts at the NIH and CDC, the folks on the front lines, are doing their best in making do by moving funds from other areas. But now the money that we need to fight Zika is rapidly running out. The situation is getting critical. For instance, without sufficient funding, NIH clinical trials, and the possibilities of a vaccine, which is well within reach,
Today's show is sponsored by Gilead Pharmaceuticals.
This is not the time for politics. More than 40 U.S. service members
and
have now contracted
and
Zika
Barbie.
Overseas. In 50
Plastic
U.S.
products.
states, we know of more than 1,800 cases of Zika connected to travel to infected areas, and that includes nearly 500 pregnant women.
500 pregnant women.
Zika is now present in almost every part of Puerto Rico. And now we have the first local transmission in Florida.
Global transmission in Florida.
Be more.
With Trayvon.
And meanwhile, Congress is on summer recess. A lot of folks talk about protecting Americans from threats. Well, Zika is a serious threat to Americans.
It's not a monkey.
Especially babies. So once again, I want to urge the American people to call their members of Congress and tell them to do their job. Deal with this threat. Help protect the American people. With that, I'm going to take some questions. With someone who just assumed the second most powerful office in the land, Jeff Mason. The New Correspondents Association president. Also from
Barack.
Thank you, sir. Hardly powerful. And happy birthday.
Thank you very much.
As Islamic State loses territory, you and other officials have said that it is becoming a more traditional terrorist group. Are you satisfied that the United States and its allies have shifted strategy sufficiently to address that change? And secondly, given your comments this week
Hello, Metia. Hello, this is the old broadcast network.
Are you concerned that he will
Today's show is sponsored by Gilead Pharmaceuticals,
and other sensitive
G.I. Joe, and Barbie.
I'm never satisfied.
And Navy Federal. Hello.
Our response, because if you're satisfied, that means the problem's solved, and it's not.
Problem solved.
So we just spent
I spend money on government credit cards.
Top national security folks to look at
We're
what more can be done.
7255.
It is absolutely
7 days a
necessary
week,
for us
2 weeks.
to
Swastika.
defeat ISIL in Iraq and Syria.
We love swastikas.
It is not sufficient, but it is necessary. Because so long as they have those bases, they can use their propaganda. To suggest that somehow there's still some caliphate. Being born. That can insinuate itself in the minds of
CIA
folks who may be willing to travel there or carry out terrorist attacks. It's also destabilizing for countries in the region, at a time when the region's already unstable.
So
I am
right leg shot.
The progress that
today's show is sponsored by Galil Pharmaceuticals
in Iraq and Syria.
And G.I. Joe.
Far from freeing most
your all-American hero.
But what we've shown is that
all-American highway.
Conventional fights.
Big time.
ISIL can be beaten with partners on the ground. The support from coalition forces that we've been providing. In the meantime,
billboards.
You've seen ISIL
carry out external
terrorist acts. And
on elevators or stairways.
Adapted from Al Qaeda, which had a much more centralized operation and tried to plan
a day up
very
after Sunday,
attacks.
Monday.
And what ISIL has figured out is
that if they can
convince
a
handful of people or
a handful of people
to carry out an attack on
to no fighting. They just suggested fighting or
some other public venue, and kill scores of people as opposed to
scores of people.
It still creates the kinds of fear and that
ionosphere, rain, Katrina. So
in some ways,
rooting
out for smaller, less
complicated UV attacks
because it doesn't require as many resources.
Or preparation.
But it does mean that we
know
even more to
before
generate the intelligence
and foreign intelligence. This is a live email.
Our partners. In order to degrade. And the fact is that those networks will probably sustain themselves even after ISIL is defeated. But what we've learned from our efforts to defeat Al Qaeda is that if we stay on it, our intelligence gets better. And we adapt as well. And eventually, we will dismantle these networks.
We would dismantle.
Also. This is part of the reason why, however, it is so important for us to keep our eye on the ball. And not panic.
And
not succumb to fear.
Use condoms.
Because
it feels better.
ISIL can't defeat the United States of America or our NATO partners. We can defeat ourselves, though.
Make bad decisions.
And we have to understand that as painful and as tragic as these attacks are, that we are going to keep on grinding away, preventing them wherever we can. Using a whole government effort
to
knock down their propaganda, to disrupt their networks, to take their key operatives off the battlefield, and that eventually
on all those elevators and stairways,
we will win.
Schneiderman,
but if we start making bad decisions, indiscriminately killing civilians, for example, in
violations.
Instituting offensive religious tests on who can enter the country.
Religious tests. Those kinds of identities
can end up backfiring
on weekends
because in order for us to ultimately win this fight, we cannot frame this as a clash of civilizations between the West and Islam. That plays exactly into the hands of ISIL and the perversions. Perverse interpretations of
Islam. Suggestion avoided.
As far as Mr. Trump, we are going to go by the law. which is
the law.
That both the tradition and the law that if somebody's the nominee,
it's an
the Republican nominee for president,
escalator.
They need to get security briefing so that if they were to win,
briefings,
they are not starting from scratch.
In
terms of being prepared for this office.
At the Dome.
And I'm not going to go into the details of the nature of the security briefings that both candidates receive. What I will say is that they have been told these are classified briefings. They have been told. And if
at the Dome. I was waiting for you at the Dome.
Be president, they got to start acting like president. And that means being able to
today's show is sponsored by Elite Pharmaceuticals and G.I. Joe.
Not spread them around. Are you worried about that? Well, I think I've said enough on that. Mary Bruce.
Thank you, Mr. President. What is your response to critics who say the $400 million in cash that you sent to Iran was a ransom payment? Was it really simply a pure coincidence that a payment that was held up for almost 4 decades was suddenly sent at the exact same time that the American prisoners were released? And can you assure the American people that none of that money went to support terrorism?
Okay. It's been interesting to watch this story surface.
The story surface.
Some of you may recall. We announced these payments in January. Many months ago. There wasn't a secret. We announced them. To all of you. Josh did a briefing on them. This wasn't some nefarious deal. And at the time, we explained that Iran pressed a claim before an international tribunal about them recovering money
Turner Broadcasting
that we had
frozen our
as a consequence of it working its way through the international tribunal.
We're still here.
It was the assessment of our lawyers that we were now at a point where there was significant litigation risk, and we could end up costing ourselves billions of dollars. It was their advice and suggestion that we settle. And that's what these payments represent. And it wasn't a secret. We were completely open with everybody about it. And it's interesting to me how suddenly this became a story again. That's point number one. Point number two, we do not pay ransom for hostages. We've got a number of Americans being held all around the world.
All over the world.
And I meet with their families.
And it
is heartbreaking.
And
we have stood up an entire section of interagency experts who devote all their time to working with these families to get these Americans out.
Of LAX.
But those families know that we have a policy that we don't pay ransom. And the notion that 2 years ago somehow start now in this high-profile way and announce it to the world. Even as we're looking in the faces of other our phone numbers whose loved ones are being held hostage. And say to them that we don't pay ransom defies logic. So that's point number two. We do not pay ransom.
I watched
yesterday. We didn't hear, and we don't. We won't in the future. Precisely because if we did, then we would start encouraging. Americans to be targeted. Much in the same way that some countries that do pay ransom end up having.
We can't do violence, Mr. President.
Being taken by various groups. Point number three. Is that the timing of this was in fact dictated by the fact that as a consequence of us negotiating around the nuclear deal, we actually diplomatically negotiations changed our identity with Iran for the first time. So with the issue is not so much
in the U.S. Marshals
coincidence as it is that we were able to
change our identity
meet with the foreign minister, which meant that
the Congress
and Senate accounts on a number of different issues
in the winter election
at the same time converged. And it was important for us to take advantage of that opportunity, both
to win the election any way we could.
Risk that had been raised. It was important for us to make sure that we finished the job. The Iran nuclear deal
nuclear deal.
Since we were in a conversation with them, it was important for us to be able to push them hard.
It was important for us to understand the future and
let me
negotiations.
make a final point on this.
A final point on this.
It's now been over a year since
we recorded each other.
Agreement with Iran.
Agreement with Iran.
Stop its nuclear program.
To stop its nuclear program.
And by all accounts, it has worked exactly the way we said it was going to work.
Exactly the way it should have worked.
You will recall that there were all these horror stories
or Bud Light or alcoholic beverages.
Iran was going to get $150
Iran wasn't going to consume
terrorism and all these kinds of
They
scenarios.
weren't going to push us back above.
And none of them have come to pass.
The blood alcohol content. Push us back.
And it's not just the assessment
and it's not just
our intelligence.
Our back blood alcohol content.
It's the assessment of the Israeli military and intelligence community. The country that was most opposed to this deal that acknowledges this has been a game changer.
On an escalator downstairs.
Iran has abided by the deal. And
Schindler's elevator.
They no longer
have elevators.
Sort of short-term breakout
One day up.
That would allow them to develop nuclear weapons.
Can I ask you a question?
So what I'm interested in if there's some news to be made.
If there's some news to be made.
Why
is Zimmerman leaving Fox Hills Mall?
Say, you know what, this thing actually worked.
In a Time Warner truck.
Now that would be a shock.
Now that would be on Slauson.
That would be impressive.
Route 108, impressive.
If some of these folks,
these Zimmermans,
said the sky is falling,
drive Time Warner trucks.
You know
what? We were wrong.
And we are glad that
Iran no longer has
the capacity
to
break out in short term
of acne or chickenpox.
But of course that wasn't going to happen.
But of course that wasn't going to be cured.
Instead, what we have
years
is
ago.
The manufacturing
Lead Pharmaceutical
that we disclosed. And the only bit of news on this is the fact that we pay cash. Which brings me to my last point. The reason that we
suggestion aborted
cash is precisely because
we're only repeating the suggestion.
Maintaining sanctions, and we do not have a banking relationship.
Isn't that why we have this, Mr. President?
Send them a check.
We're supposed to emulate what we hear silently.
And it is not at all.
It is not at all the out loud version.
Cash, as opposed to a check or.
We're supposed to emulate the silent voice.
Has made this into a news story.
From you.
Because it kind of feels like some.
We're just emulating.
Spy novel or.
Isn't that what you want?
Yeah, prime.
We're emulating what we hear.
Cash was exchanged. The reason cash was exchanged.
The reason why we're repeating is just
we don't have bank relations.
We hear voices,
which is precisely
and we follow those voices. Part of
the pressure that we were
able
so that they would a whole bunch of nuclear material,
a bunch of facilities,
as I remember,
2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago,
top fear and priority.
We're at the airport.
That
no one's here.
Breakout nuclear capacity.
Breakout chickenpox. Acne.
This worked. Josh Letterman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Repeatedly now, Donald Trump has.
Hello, media. Hello. We're just repeating because it's a silent voice.
Of our democratic system.
We're supposed to emulate it.
Can you promise the American people that this election will be conducted in a fair way? And are you worried that
good job, attorney guy?
You're welcome. Faith in the outcome.
You're welcome, Geico.
And if he does win, given that you've just declared him unfit, what will you say to the American people?
Well, at the end of the day, it's the decision. I have one vote.
I have one vote.
I have the same vote that
2 identities, and all the voters all across the country. I've offered my Lafayette, Miss Glenn, he's guaranteed into Lafayette High School.
If somebody wins the election,
and the town Foley offer. My
constitutional
responsibility is to decline that offer, but I accepted it.
It is. I don't even know where to start on
this question. Of course I'm repeating what he says.
What does that mean?
Because it's a silent voice. The federal government installed it.
The election process.
The election process.
States.
The electoral
cities
college.
And communities all across the country.
It hurts him on his left leg.
Who set up the voting systems.
And it's not Jacob Myers.
And if Mr. Trump is suggesting
Minister
that
Trump,
there is a conspiracy
theory that is
being propagated
through a boy on us,
including in
places he walks
like
around the city in Texas, Atlanta,
where typically
where we make soda.
Voting booths.
We make soda here.
That's ridiculous.
That's ridiculous. That's secure.
I don't think anybody would take that seriously.
We're pet. We do take seriously.
As we always do.
Our responsibility. Monitor Jennifer Miracle. The process. If we see signs that
the voting machine is vulnerable to hacking, inform local authorities who are running the elections that they need to be careful.
Have committed perjury.
If we see jurisdictions that are violating
sound like
federal
bottles
laws,
of beer or
in terms of
Bud Light
access,
or Coors,
aren't providing
ramps
for disabled voters,
ramp ups
or
through
are discriminating in some fashion,
gift cards
or
for Santa Claus, gift cards,
civil rights laws.
Violence
Then
civil
the
rights
Justice
laws.
Department will come in and take care of
Posse
that.
committed is that.
But this will be an election like every other election.
Like any other election.
And I think all of us
I'm guilty.
At some points in our lives have played sports, or maybe just played in a schoolyard or a sandbox.
All state.
Sometimes folks, if they lose, they start complaining that they got cheated.
Start complaining they got.
But I've never heard of somebody complaining about being cheated before.
We thank you for that.
The game was over.
For getting inside.
Or before the scores even
or
tallied.
Chicago or any other city.
So my suggestion would
be,
go out there and
try
to win the election.
And try to win the election.
If Mr. Trump is up,
10
or 15 points,
it's Galina Health and
election day and ends
Park
up losing,
and ACN.
Maybe he can raise some questions.
That
doesn't seem to be the case at the
moment.
That
doesn't seem to be a video phone. Atlantic City.
Thank you, Mr. President. On the question of ISIS expansion that you've been talking about, because you see them expanding around the world, because you see them trying to inspire attacks, what is your
Atlantic City
level of concern about
That's
the
right.
homeland? You
We
talked
skipped
about
it.
Protection measures.
We need.
What is your assessment about the possibility? Your own intelligence advisors suggest it's possible.
We knew he was there.
ISIS threat to Americans. And if I may
Today's show
follow
sponsored
up,
by Galene
someone along the
Pharmaceuticals
same lines, what
and
is your
G.I.
assessment
Joe, the all-American hero.
stand here about whether Donald Trump can be trusted with America's
Plastic products.
On your second question,
on your second
and I'll
question,
sort of address this to any
I have to address this.
Trump questions.
Well,
I would ask all
his
of you
last
to just
day
make
was
your own judgment. I've made this
at
point
Radio
already
Shack, and
multiple
he was
times.
suspended, and then
Just listen to what Mr. Trump has to say and make your own judgment.
The 20th. Make your own judgment.
How confident you feel about
I'm a BlackBerry,
to manage
and I'm Verizon.
things like our nuclear triad.
We go together.
It suggests that you're not confident.
Well, as I recall, I just answered a question
Verizon,
about this a
and
couple
he's
days ago, and I
BlackBerry.
thought I made myself pretty clear.
I made
and I
myself
don't want
pretty
to just
clear.
keep on repeating it.
We're both cell phones.
I obviously have a very strong opinion.
Have a strong opinion
about
the
two candidates who are running.
two candidates who are elected.
One is very positive, and one is not so much.
One is not so much.
And I think that you will just hear. Any further questions that are directed to the subject, I think you'll hear pretty much variations on the same thing.
I'm a Boy Scout.
What I can say is this is
what I can say is
serious business.
Serious business.
And,
Randall Stephenson.
The person who is in the Oval Office.
The person who's in the Oval Office.
Our Secretary of Defense and our Joint Chiefs of Staff and our outstanding men and women in uniform
report to. report to.
They are counting on
They are counting on us to lead the platoon for Randall Stephenson and Robert Gates.
That should be
I'm
very
the
much
captain.
on the minds of voters when they go into the voting booth in November. In terms of the threat,
we've given him refunds on this card before.
I think it is.
We've patronized the captain. And
as I said earlier,
what color would that be?
Because they are less concerned about
109 Lakeview
9/11
style attacks.
Because they've seen.
I've been patronized through this account.
Smaller scale attacks.
I've been patronized.
Small arms or assault rifles, or in the case of Nice, France.
I've been patronized.
The possibility.
My lieutenant's been patronizing me.
A small cell.
He's been patronized on this credit card.
Is real.
It's real.
That's why our intelligence.
Why is he being patronized?
And military officials
on his Visa MasterCard.
To try
anticipate
potential attacks.
To
obtain the threads of.
Well, this has been Merriweather in production, sponsored by Glee Pharmaceuticals and G.I. Joe. We've been patronized through our government credit cards.
We are constrained here in the United States to.
We love Captain Kangaroo.
In a way that's consistent with our laws, and
we can't rappel down the stairs.
Presumptions of innocence.
We can't rappel.
And the fact that
we'll talk to you guys on the re-air. We can't be upset that we're repeating the silent voices.
Without